Money shapes the world more than borders. It decides which countries rise and which remain trapped. It influences wars, peace, education, technology, and even our daily survival. Long before most people notice politics or culture, money has already shaped the outcome. But here is the question most of us never stop to ask. If countries are independent, who really controls the world's money? At first glance, the answer seems obvious. Governments control their own money. Each country has its own currency, its own central bank, its own leaders, its own economic policies. Independence, in theory, means control. But when we look deeper, the picture changes. Because money doesn't just belong to nations. It belongs to systems. And most countries did not design the systems that govern global money today. To understand who really controls the world's money, we have to go back to a critical moment in history. After the Second World War, the global economy was in ruins. Europe was devastated. Factories were destroyed. Trade had collapsed. Entire nations were rebuilding from ashes. The fear wasn't just poverty, but chaos. The most powerful countries wanted a system that would prevent another economic collapse like the Great Depression. So, in 1944, representatives from these nations gathered in a quiet town called Bretton Woods in the United States. Their mission was to design a new global financial order, one that would stabilize currencies, encourage trade, and prevent future crises. Out of that meeting came two powerful institutions, the International Monetary Fund, known as the IMF, and the World Bank. On paper, their purpose sounded noble. Help countries stabilize their economies, provide loans for development, prevent financial collapse, promote growth and cooperation. But there was a silent problem from the very beginning. Most of the world was not in that room. Africa, much of Asia, and large parts of Latin America were still under colonial rule. They had no voice. They didn't help write the rules. They didn't shape the system. The modern global money system was created without them. As the decades passed, colonies gained independence. Flags were raised. Anthems were sung. Leaders promised a new future. But when these newly independent countries entered the global economy, they entered a system that was already designed by others. A system where power, influence, and decision-making were already concentrated. One of the strongest tools in this system is debt. When a country faces economic trouble, it often borrows money from institutions like the IMF or the World Bank. These loans are presented as support, as rescue, as opportunity. But they are never just money. They come with conditions. Countries are told to reduce public spending, to cut subsidies, to privatize public services. They're told to open their markets to foreign companies and remove protections for local industries. These conditions are called structural adjustment programs. In theory, they are meant to strengthen economies. In reality, they often weaken societies. Education budgets shrink. Healthcare becomes expensive. Local businesses collapse under competition they're not prepared for. Jobs disappear. Social safety nets vanish. The country receives money, but it loses control over its own decisions. Debt becomes a quiet form of power, not through invasion, but through obligation. Then there's currency. Not all currencies are equal. Some are powerful. Some are fragile. Some dominate global trade, while others struggle to survive on international markets. At the center of this system sits the United States dollar. Oil is priced in dollars. Global trade is settled in dollars. International debt is paid in dollars. Central banks all around the world store their reserves in dollars. This gives extraordinary power to one currency, and by extension, one country. When US interest rates rise, developing countries suffer. Their debt becomes more expensive. Their imports cost more. Inflation increases. Their local currencies weaken. Yet, these countries have no influence over US monetary decisions. They don't vote on them. They don't shape them. Still, they live with the consequences. This is not a coincidence. It's structure. Trade follows the same pattern. Many poorer countries export raw materials. Cocoa from West Africa, oil from Nigeria, copper from Zambia, gold from Congo. These valuable resources are sold cheaply. They are then processed elsewhere, manufactured elsewhere, and sold back as finished goods at much higher prices. This keeps wealth flowing in one direction. The factories remain in rich countries. The jobs remain there. The technology remains there. Meanwhile, resource-rich nations stay dependent. exporting value instead of building it. Some people say this is caused by corruption alone. And yes, corruption is real and incredibly damaging. But corruption is not the full explanation. Even honest governments struggle inside a system that was designed without them in mind. When the rules are written by the powerful, they naturally favor the powerful. This is why independence did not bring full economic freedom. Political control changed hands, but economic control did not. However, history is not destiny. Some countries recognized this reality early. They protected their key industries. They invested heavily in education. They controlled their own resources before opening their markets. They built strong institutions before chasing foreign profit. China, for example, delayed its full economic openness until it could compete. Norway controlled its vast oil wealth through strong public institutions. These choices mattered, but many other countries were never given that chance. Their economies were opened too early. Their industries collapsed before they could mature. Their debts grew faster than their development. Understanding this is so important. Not to create excuses, not to deny responsibility, but to replace judgment with clarity. Poverty is not simply a moral failure, and wealth is not always a reward for hard work. Much of the global inequality we see today is historical, structural, and deeply embedded in systems created long ago. When you understand who controls the world's money, the world starts to make a lot more sense. Borders make sense. Conflicts make sense. Economic struggles make sense. And once you understand the system, you stop blaming individuals for problems that are rooted in history. If this helped you see money, power, and inequality more clearly, subscribe to our channel. More honest history is coming. We'll be sharing stories about how the past still controls the present and the truths that continue to shape our world today. Thanks for watching.